So in the museum, they have put a series of glass cases down the middle of it. And in each of these glass cases, they have preserved some of the artifacts that they took from the prisoners that they put there. So you can see through here, you've got postcards and pictures, identification, letters, okay, some more identification and more postcards. This was the register book that the Nazis used to keep track of all of the prisoners who came in and out. And it didn't say exactly, well, it says up here what they are, but, I can't read German. But, you've got names on here. I'm sure dates of birth, probably where they came from, dates of death, if that's what occurred. This is what that room looks like. Okay, so we were just looking at all these cases down the middle here. This is the same room that we were just in with all of those shoes. So look how high these ceilings are, okay, compared to the people here. And look at the size of this room. There's still a good third of the room behind me. Okay, I'm standing almost in the middle of the room when I took this shot. Let me see if I can go backwards here real quick and show you that other part. Oops, not that part. So look at that. Look how close this guy's head is to the ceiling. Those columns you saw, those are the exact same columns that are here. And look at how many pairs of shoes. How many people must have gone through this and been taken into this camp to fill a room that size with shoes? It's unbelievable. All right, so let's move on. We're going to go down the hall here. This room continues this way past these posters, and so we're going to go that way. So back then, obviously, it wasn't used as a museum. They used it to process the prisoners through. So they took all of their belongings, and then as they moved down the room to the end of it, prisoners were then sent to the showers where they were disinfected, the hair was cut, and they were also given prison uniforms to wear. So this is what that looked like. We just came through here, okay? So if you go through here and you turn right, you were just in the room we were in. I want you to notice the arches here in a moment because I'm going to show you what it looks like today. So this was an actual shower room. These were not gas chambers. Nothing, no killing happened here. Okay, these were true showers to get the prisoners cleaned and shaved and into uniforms to take them into the camp. So this is what it looked like. Notice those are those same arches here. Okay, so that's just where they were. They've taken all the shower apparatus down. That huge room that we were just in, the museum part there, is to our backs. Okay, so we went down a small little, we went through like an opening, and this is where we're at. This is a view of that room now. Okay, so we've walked through and we're looking at it. You can still see they've left all of the concrete, things how they are. I mean, they've cleaned it up a bit because obviously it is a museum. This room, when it wasn't used as a shower room, they also used it as a torture room. This is one of the things that is on display in there. There was no information on what exactly they did here, although, it looks like some sort of beating type of a thing. They also hung prisoners to torture them this way in that room. On their prison uniforms, they had a system to try to identify what type of prisoner you were. And so you can see the sheer amount of different types of prisoners they had here. So this line here would have been a Jewish prisoner. This line here, I know these were prisoners of war. I don't remember what these other ones were. I apologize. But then each color, too, was a different type. So I know, for example, the pink one is if you were homosexual. So if you were homosexual and you were a Jew, this would be the marking on your uniform. You can see the uniforms were marked both on your chest and also on the pants area so that they could easily identify what type of prisoner you were. So after you were processed through and you had the shower and you were given your uniform, you were taken to the barracks. And this is what those barracks looked like back then. Okay, you can see they're all still standing. This is what they looked like when the Allies came to free this camp. So you can see in the middle of it, conditions were so overcrowded that there's almost all these little shanties that are, whatever they could kind of put together. And things were filthy. There was trash everywhere, okay, broken bits of things. This, once again, is what they look like today. I wanted to show you this to show you the sheer amount that they had here. So today, even though it's in black and white, there are just the first two standing. But you can see behind here all of the placeholders of the rest of them. So this is what they look like today. Those first two are still there. And here's what the placeholders look like. And this is deceivingly long. I could not believe how far down this went. So each barrack has the foundation left, so you could still get a feel for how many there were and where they were located. I'm about halfway down here, believe it or not, and you can see how very teeny tiny things get at the end here. Yeah, sorry for the poor quality of this picture here, but I mean, you can see how far I've got to go. You were thinking when you first started on this walk here, as you walk down between them, or on the end of them in this case, that you were going to get to the other end fairly quickly, all the things that were down here to continue seeing the camp. But it took us a good 5 minutes just at a regular walking pace to get down there. And if you just walk flat out for 5 minutes, you get a pretty long distance. So here's about halfway down. So what they did inside of the standing barracks was they tried to show you the progression of what they looked like throughout the war. So this would have been the sleeping quarters in the early war. And you can see here you have a definite bunk of your own. Okay, you know where your bed stops and somebody else's begins. There's a little more space. But as the war went on, things became more and more crowded. They crammed more and more people in here. So this would have been like mid-war. So you still have kind of like divisions of space, okay, but you see how you can fit more people in here. But by the end of the war, this is what you were dealing with. They were trying to cram as many people in there as they possibly could. So this is 3 layers of just as many bodies as you can possibly fit in there. And it was still crowded because remember the alleyways between the barracks were filled with people trying to live out there because there was no room inside even. You can imagine what that must have been like. There were toilet facilities. This is what remains. So for a whole barracks, you had 10 toilet facilities. And I'm sure these always worked and they never were disgusting or anything like that. I hope you can hear the sarcasm over the YouTube here. Anyway, so one thing that's important to know, because between the toilet facilities and the sink facilities as well, and even the mess hall, which is here. Remember, Dachau was one of the very first ones created, okay? And they actually did have people come to inspect these and make sure they were quote unquote humane. But many times, especially ones as you went after Dachau and you were creating, you know, your other concentration camps and death camps, they tried to make it appear that this was a humane thing to do to people, but in reality, many of these things didn't work. So yes, you may have had sinks and toilets in there, but that was not a guarantee that those were actually functioning. Okay, many times they just put things there so that as, you know, people were brought through. It's like, oh yes, look, we are treating our prisoners, you know, very respectfully. Look, they have toilet facilities, they have running water, they have access to a mess hall, when in reality, that was not the case. Dachau probably would have had these things in place a little more than other places because remember, it didn't start out as a concentration camp. It started out as a prisoners camp, and then conditions would have deteriorated from there. I did this because I wanted to show you the size of the plate. And usually if we were in class, I'd hold my hand up. I mean, my hand's not that big. And that plate easily fit between my first finger and my thumb. So I'm looking at that right now, and I've got maybe 6 inches between my finger and my thumb, the tips of them. That plate was tiny, and that's what they got their meal on when they got a meal. That stuck with me, and I could not believe how small that was. So life at Dachau. A lot of the pictures you're going to see here were taken early on, so it was a work camp. Okay, so you have prisoners doing construction work here, and that continues here. You have prisoners doing munitions work. Now, You know that these were not working, okay? Munitions work was taking apart things to use them for parts. So anything here was non-functioning, okay? It's not like they had access to weapons and they could have, rose up against the Nazis or anything. It just, that wasn't an option. More prisoners on their way to work. What I'm going to show you now is the camp bunker. These were the prison within the prison, actually. So right here is that administration building, that huge U-shaped place that I took you through earlier, where half of it's a museum, and that's where the showers were. Behind it, out of sight of everybody, was the camp prisons. And obviously, there's my husband. This is my brother, so you know, we took him on our trip too. This was the year he graduated. My brother is like a monster. He's like 6'8", just so you know. Anyway, so first of all, you can see right off the bat here. Look at these little teeny tiny windows up at the top here. So this is the prison. There's looking in the other direction, so you can see it's just as long as the other. Okay, all of these little windows here, these are all separate cells within the prison. Here was the floor plan of it. So it's a huge long building with one hallway kind of down through the whole thing, and you could see all the cells. And I couldn't even back up enough to try to get, there's more off to this way and off this way as well. Okay, there was a ton of cells within here. In the middle here, these were more administration and questioning rooms, which I'll show you here in a second. So the first thing I want to show you is an interrogation room. So this was where they often maltreated, they tortured prisoners to try to force confessions out of them. I want you to notice the walls in these rooms as I show them to you. Notice how thick they are, and that was to hide the screaming. So here would be an example of one of those. You can see how thick these walls are. This is like over a foot thick. This was a guard day room. It's where they would hang out and relax. And I want you to notice this door over here. You can see the walls are still thick. There was also double doored. So there was a door on this side, and there was an identical door on the other side, so that, they would both be closed. So you had a double thickness, for any kind of sound carrier or anything like that to try to get through. This was the registration room, so when you were brought here, there would have been tables and other things here for them to register you into the prison portion. And right here, I'm standing in the very middle of it, and I took a picture down one hallway and down another. Don't ask me why one is this color and one was this color. I have no idea. They didn't really go into that. I don't know if they were for separate types of prisoners or whatever. What I do want you to notice is how long these hallways are. So you can see there are skylights in the ceiling here. And here's another skylight, and down here's another skylight. This was not the end. You're not looking at a door here. This is a skylight, so it still continues beyond this. This was a very, very long building. Same thing on this side. You can see where the skylights are as you're looking down through. This is what one of the doors looked like. So you can see it locks from the outside. You have a peephole and a way to speak through. If you were lucky, you ended up in one of these rooms that at least had a nice window that you could, take a look outside. Most of the prison rooms looked like this, and you wouldn't be able to see outside unless you were like my brother. Medical experiments were also performed on some of the prisoners at Dachau. Some of the medical experiments they did included high altitude experiments, where they wanted to see what would happen to the body if you exposed it to less and less air pressure. Remember, they used a lot of their prisoners like guinea pigs. They didn't see them as humans. They saw them as less than human, and they thought that just like doing experiments on a lab rat or another animal was allowable, these were considered on the same level, that it was acceptable to do experiments on humans because they weren't really human. Here's a freezing experiment that they did, where they would subject the body to colder and colder temperatures to see what was the process of the organs shut down and how cold of a temperature the human body could withstand. And Dachau was not a death camp, but many people died there as a result of malnutrition, diseases, experiments, and some other means. And I will go into those in the next video.